Are you an artist that's tried every way you can think of to connect with your audience? Well, Gem Nation is a new tool created for fans and artists to connect like never before. Once someone proves they're a true fan by streaming your song a set number of times, they gain access to your artist space, where they can get first or exclusive access to things like tickets, merch, or whatever else you want to give them. Download the app today and claim your artist space. That's JAMM Nation. Supercharge your fan engagement today with Gem Nation.
Let's go.
I am so excited to welcome Dusty Moats to the podcast today. Oh my gosh, this just made my day. But what really made my day was, I guess it was Thursday or Friday, Under the Neon, your new EP dropped. And I sat and had some quiet time in between all the busyness and all the stuff that was going on with me this weekend. And it just blew me away. And I know this is your baby and it meant so much to you. And we're going to go through the songs because there's so much to talk about. But just tell us, Dusty, what this EP means to you.
Well, I've recorded some things in my life, but this is the first full-fledged project in my 30 years of playing music that I actually put together a group of songs collectively. I know my story. We've talked about this before. I kind of did this before at a younger age, did some publishing, did some writing, and then kind of got out of it and got into the corporate world, and COVID kind of changed everything. And so to be able to do this at, you know, I'm not afraid to. I'm always admit how old I am. I'm 51 years old. I've been doing this for a long time, and to be able to do something like this at this age, after not doing it when I was really, really, really serious and into it. Of course, engaging in the lifestyle is like what I like to call it. Paying attention to all the variables, creative and fun. Right. To do this now, it is probably the proudest moment of my career. I feel like this is the best material I've ever put together. The songs that I had written or participated in writing in are I love what I've done prior, but I think this album is probably, or this EP is probably more of a reflection of me as an artist and what my influence is in comparison to anything else that I've done. I recorded it at Rosewood. That's my place,
Mm-hmm.
and I think a lot of the reason why this came out the way that it did and why I am so proud of it is that, Drew and Carrie and I have become amazing friends, compadres, love them like family.
Yes.
With some of the work I do with other artists, I encourage a lot of people to record there. And I basically, what you get is first off, you learn to trust each other. And second off, you get to know each other, kind of what
Yes.
everybody's looking for. There's also some fortunate stuff. Some of the musicians that played on this album, man, they've done everything else for me too. I think everybody that's on this record has worked with me prior with other stuff that I've done. And so to all of that stuff, variable, Drew and I laugh. We talk about the life I love is making music with my friends, the old Willie Nelson song. We talk a lot about that. So ultimately, that's really what this is. The life I love is making music with my friends, new and old, people that have been around for a long time. And so there's a whole bunch of little meanings inside of this record. But to start with, that's really where it starts.
Yes, and I'm trying to decide where I want to start because I was so excited about so much. Let's start with, of course, the title cut, Under the Neon. You did release to radio, and then looking at She Comes to Me, which is on the EP. Always look at the songwriters, so it's
Yeah.
interesting. I want to hear the story behind this one because it was co-written with Chris Stapleton and Terry McBride. So
Now,
tell me how you got a hold of that and how that came
so
together for you.
so interestingly enough, that's actually their song. I didn't have any writing on it, but do you remember my song? And I don't know if you and I we knew each other at this time, but I had a single out called Everyone Knows.
Hmm.
Um, and so released that in September, October of 2021. And when that song came out, there's a certain vibe and a feel to it. I have a buddy of mine up in Nashville that works for a publishing company. And man, the moment that song came out, he said, "Man, I know you love writing your own songs, but man, this song would fit you." And he said, "Man, it really kind of has the same vibe, same feel. I'm going to send you a version of it. Um, don't listen to this version of it. Listen to what you think it could be." And I'm thinking, okay, man, whatever, right? I am a little different. Um, a lot of Texas artists are fast and are hardcore and steadfast on writing their own material. I believe that, man, there's other art or other writers and stuff some of the best songs that I've had. She Comes to Me is a perfect example, right?
Yes.
Of songs that are just so well written and are cool that as an artist, I want to do those too. I'm not opposed to recording other people's songs. So man, I get this single and I'm like, okay. And I listened to it, and apparently it was cut and released by James Otto back in, oh my gosh, 2007, 2008. And I'm like, okay, first off, I don't sound anything like James Otto. Amazing, low, sultry, sexy voice. Um, but the song and the chord progression had a melody that was very similar and it kind of had that same dark feel, but it was almost polar opposite of everyone else, right? It's about cheating and it's about, you know,
Mm-hmm.
people being unsatisfied. And I love the words to the song. And I started doing beta testing with it. I was touring Idaho, Montana, Wyoming acoustically, and I started playing it acoustically, and it went over really well. And we just decided that we were going to put it on the record. And the cool part about, and to me, if you listen to the actual version that I heard, it is so drastically different. We channeled Exile and Ronnie Millsap and a couple of other people when we started recording this single. And man, it came out so 80s that
Yes, it did.
I
Yes.
don't even know what to think about it. I know they put some of I don't know if you remember music of the 80s, Ronnie Millsap, Earl Thomas
Yes,
Conway,
absolutely. Yes,
Gary
yes.
Stewart. And when you listen to the vibe of this album, it is 70s, 80s, and
Exactly.
90s. Yeah. And
Yes.
so what we wound up doing with this, it was it, we didn't even know how we were going to do it. We sat down in the pre-recording meeting and kind of did some arranging. And then ultimately, kind of towards the tail end, Carrie from Rosewood actually put those digital drums and some of that stuff that actually kind of brought the song to life.
Mhm.
And so, you kind of get mixed reaction. I'm friends with Daryl Dodd. I think we talked a little bit about the Under the Neon single that I released, that he's talking about nobody making music like that anymore. We talked a little bit about this song via text the other day, and he was like, man, I can't say anything. It's exactly in that vein.
Yes.
And it fits with the record perfectly. So, I'm floored that I got to record the Stapleton Terry McBride song, which I think is amazing.
Mhm.
So when we decided we're going to do it, I got the approval and we kind of put it together, and it's so different, so different than the original. And it became something that, even though it was written by Chris and Terry, Terry and I talked about it on a podcast one time about that. I'm going to cut this song. We kind of laughed about it, but it became my song, you know. Funny story about that song. I remember playing it one time and I was, our friend Nate Burnham,
Oh,
smart ass.
yes.
I love him. Consummate smart ass, right? He looks at me, he said, man, you're just going to be just like Randy Rogers. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, the best song on your album was written by somebody else. He was talking about Kiss Me in the Dark.
Yes. That's yes. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I said, and he's probably, I don't know if I agree with it, but I think probably the most technically well-written song. Of course, those guys are seasoned songwriters. That's it. It's a great song.
Mhm.
And I believe that our version is extremely competitive, and we're seeing it on streaming too, and some of the playlists that it's been landing on. You know, I'm lucky, very thankful, and very blessed to put it together. Under
That's
the Neon,
awesome.
yeah. Well, and Under
Yeah.
the Neon was Brad Russell, Kyle Fambro, and myself. That was written via text message. We
Mhm.
passed the song back and forth. Honestly, are you familiar with Kristen Foreman?
Mm-mm.
So she has a song out called Crown and Coke. And so I remember when I started coming up with the idea for Under. I am a huge fan of female artists. Okay, like I love how females sing. Technically, they're amazing singers. Sometimes, most of the time, they're control, at least in my opinion, and the runs and stuff they can do. You look at people like Kelly Clarkson and things like that. They're just technically amazing singers. And she has this song called Crown and Coke, and it kind of is what inspired me to start working on Under the Neon. And so when you listen to them, they're not the same, but that's kind of the song that actually go, okay, man, I want to write something like that. And so when we started putting it together, I sent it to uh, Kyle first, and so we were messing with words. I had a verse and a chorus, and he kind of put the second verse together, and then I sent it to Brad, and Brad is actually the one that actually kind of started putting those major sevenths that were reminiscent of Gary Stewart. And
Hmm.
so it became a totally different song. And in my opinion, that is my favorite song on the whole album. And I think a lot of that has to do with my own preference of what I like. Barry Gary Stewart, Johnny Lee. I remember picking up Strangers, Looking for Love. Um, um, Empty Glass. A lot of people compare
Yes.
it to Empty
Hmm.
Glass. It's kind of, but that's because of those major sevens. And so, you know, critically, I think from what I've heard, that song has probably been the most interestingly and well received because it's a throwback, you know?
It is. It is. Yes, absolutely,
So,
for sure.
there's it's interesting when you're putting stuff together. I When I put these 6 songs together, I had probably 40 other songs that I'd written that I'd considered. And to be frank, when I started looking at the groupings of the stuff that I'd written and the stuff that I was going to cut, I just didn't feel like this other songs kind of had the feel or the vibe. And I'm not super analytical. I don't know if you know me. I'm pretty direct. I don't
Hmm.
overthink. I'm a just do it kind of guy.
Yes.
But I did believe that there was a tone and a texture and a vibe that I wanted to convey with this record. And as we were recording these songs, I knew 100% that everything that we were going to get out of it kind of felt the way that it needed to feel. Being 80s and 90s, and I could talk about this forever, the key component of this record, and steel is on there. If you notice, there's no fiddle on this record at all. Um, but the key component of the 80s and of the 80s country music was always Rhodes piano, keyboards, organ, piano itself. So it's a really piano based record. My band doesn't have steel and fiddle in it. I have a piano player. The same piano player has been with me for 25 years. So,
Hmm.
you know, it legitimately is, these songs are everything that I represent most of the time, even in my covers, that I choose. So, like I said, when we were picking the songs, I could have done some things, and there's multiple songs on this record that are covers that, man, are specifically on this record with intent and purposes.
Yes. Well, let's move to another song that was had a it was a project in itself. And we probably could have did a whole podcast on Fender Bender, you and the Squeezebox Bandits, and that whole campaign and that whole project. So let's go ahead and dig into that. Dusty, go.
Okay. So, that song right there, the cool story behind that, there was a song that was written. Kyle Fambro, another guy that I do a lot of work with, had written a song that was already done called Fender Bender. And when he sent it to me, I had asked him, I said, man, I love it. I said, but I hope you don't mind. We do this to each other all the time. We're very respectful of what our bodies of work. I said, man, can I make some changes? And he's like, yeah. And so I got the song, and man, there's 5 or 6 line changes that I made in that song that, in my mind, and he'll tell you the same thing, complete the song. He called me, he goes,
Mhm.
I can't believe I didn't think of that. I said, Bubba, that's why we got co-writers. Because, man, sometimes, and I go through this too as a writer, I'm not real stubborn. I love writing with people because it expands my mind. Obviously, Under the Neon's a perfect example of 3 people touching a song and it becoming something completely different, right? And
Mhm.
if you heard how it started, it's funny. I think when we get off this podcast, I'm actually going to send you the roughs on my voice memo of Under the Neon. You'll die at the difference.
I would
It's
love
so different.
that.
So
I
so
would
you
love
can
that.
actually see the evolution and the mechanics of how the song evolved. Fender Bender was the same way. Kyle is
Mm.
amazing. I don't know if you know Kyle Fambro. He's an amazing singer, an artist that was out. He did Texas music for a while. He's called TC Fambro and the Copperheads. Really popular in Tarrant County in West Texas. And so when I changed the words, we cut it. He's like, okay, let's do it. So we did that. And then, of course, I think Squeezebox Bandits at one point in time, the original version, it was pitched to them. And so they never took it. And so when I picked up the song and kind of did my own writing on it, and it became mine and Kyle's composition, Abel and I have been friends for, there's a story. I could probably be a member of the Squeezebox Bandits, honestly. He and I have been friends. We live in the same town. And I asked him, I said, hey, man, do you want to get involved in this? I think it'd be really cool. We didn't know, we didn't really realize that we were going to do this big ordeal or this big production, right? And then we didn't know how it
Right.
was going to tie in with Freddie Fender. Didn't even realize it until cataclysmically, all of a sudden these things started popping up and it became that. But he's like, yeah, man, let's jump in. And we talked about how great Freddie was and how he's had some really innovative and had been a catalyst for Hispanics and Tejano artists in country music. And so when we cut the song, man, we didn't really realize it. And it became what it became. And his accordion and him singing Spanish on that verse um, really made the record in my mind. We're doing some touring together in the months of September and October. And man, full band shows. I'm playing with them. We're gonna do some cool things. We're at Luckenbach. That's gonna be kind of a big deal for us with this song.
Oh,
but
wow.
we didn't anticipate. I knew Freddie Fender's birthday was in June, but I didn't anticipate the 25th anniversary or the 50th anniversary of Before the Next Teardrop Falls. I didn't anticipate going down and being on Domingo Live, that huge Tejano show with Augie Myers,
Right.
Tex Maniacs, and that just became something that came to fruition. And we made some headway. We're still working on getting Freddie Fender into the Country Music Hall of Fame. But at the end of the day, we just really wanted to make a tribute song to somebody that nobody has ever made a song for. And it became this huge ordeal. And I think when it comes to, being proud of something for purpose, I think Freddie Fender, the Fender Bender song is probably, again, Life I Love is making music with my friends, Abel, who I've been friends with for 10, 15 years. And writing a song with him after knowing the history. And long story short, there's a barbecue place in Saginaw called Texas Pit Barbecue. And man, when I was working in the corporate world, I'd take a little 3 and 4 piece band there and I would play on a Tuesday or a Thursday night. And Abel would show up. And I drank then. We'd be drinking and hanging out. Next thing you know, Abel's up on stage with us with his accordion, and we're doing full band shows with Abel, the Squeezebox Bandits. And people don't even realize, fast forward 10 years, Abel's got his uber popular, kind of I don't even know, Texican Tejano band, Squeezebox Bandits, doing really great. And I'm kind of doing what I'm doing. But we've maintained that relationship. And so, I don't know if you know this. I played Green Hall with the Squeezebox Bandits. We almost sold the place out in January of 2023. He had lots of people. We had lots of people come from the DFW area and come down there. And so out of all that relationship, right? Life I Love is making music with my friends. Here's a single. And then it has an even bigger purpose with the Freddie Fender. So
Yes.
I think I'm the most proud of that just because of the purpose, if that makes sense.
Yes. Have you ever wondered how artists like Treaty Oak Revival, Red Clay Strays, and Aaron Watson maintain the high quality and high demand for their merchandise? CH Lone Star Promo is the answer. Created in Texas to serve Texas artists, and they're currently offering 15% off on all merch orders from musicians. Visit chlonestarpromo.com to get started and tell them Texas Toast sent you.
I was reading the other day that it takes at least $1 million to break an artist. That's a ton of change, and it can feel overwhelming. But with social media leveling the playing field, you just need an effective strategy to release your music. Check out Release Rocket to ensure your single does not die after release day. You've already put time, effort, and tons of money into writing and recording your album. Let the guys at Release Rocket keep your new release alive.
I barely sit around, but I'll be working on a project, working on something, and I get a text from Dusty. I remember when you set me by you.
Yep.
Bayou, Down on the Bayou. That is still I love that song. So what tell us about that and what your plans are for that one, because I listened to that song over and over.
I don't really know.
You don't know.
I'm kind
It's
of
just
sitting in the
fun.
driving, sitting in the seat trying to figure out what's next. I'm going through some stuff personally. They're not bad, but just dealing with some and trying to figure out how that cataclysmically works with my career. I do believe either Bayou or She Comes to Me is going to be my next radio single. But Bayou is actually another song that I kind of got to dogpile, make some changes on and co-write with a couple of people. And this is the result of it. This song in particular, I don't know if you remember Jerry Abbott. Jerry is actually Dimebag Darrell and Vinnie Paul's dad from Pantera.
Wow. Wow.
And Johnny Park was in a band called Archer Park back in the day. Had a song out called Where There's Smoke, You'll Find My Old Flame. He's also written a couple #1 hits. My relationship to those guys, first off, I'm from here. my relationship to Jerry Abbott in particular, I knew Vinnie Paul pretty well. Just because, man, living here and playing music, doing, having friends that played at Cowboys and stuff like
Mhm.
that. But the real tie-in was a gentleman by the name of Gary Hogue, God rest his soul, was a steel player for Marty Stewart for a long, long time. And they had a studio up in Nashville called Abtracks. And kind of so in '04 and '05, I was in Nashville, kind of my younger days, kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I was in Nashville and got a chance when I was writing and doing a bunch of stuff working with those guys. And so this song is actually a product for those times. And of course, I get this song, was able to change some stuff and make
Mhm.
it part my own and release it. It's one of my favorites to play live. Um, and the song is really, really meaningful to me also because, Jerry was a pretty close friend of mine and Gary passed away. Um, I don't know. It's been yeah, it's interesting. But passed away a few years ago, and then Jerry just passed a few months ago. And so,
Oh,
think about kind of I'm getting a little emotional talking about it, but
I can
you
see
know,
that, and
it's
I can understand. Yes. Mhm.
well, and there's some personal stuff to it too, because you know, a lot of those attempts when I was younger to do the things that I was doing, it wasn't that they were futile. Kind of got in my own way, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And to come full circle and spend time with a lot of these guys back in those days, and then do what I'm doing now. Um, you know, I kind of wish everybody was around to see. I was
Yeah.
in Nashville a month ago. I do multiple things, talent buying and things of that nature. And I was in for a couple meetings with a publishing deal for a possible writing deal. And speaking of those times, I was at Music City Grill. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's across from the Grand Ole Opry. And I had a friend of mine named Joey Floyd that played with Toby Keith for a lot of years, probably 20, 25 years. And I don't know if you know, the majority of his band is actually from the DFW area. I've had numerous friends play with him. And, kind of in the same circle, Joey was friends with Jerry. I'd, I'd run when I'd go to Nashville and Joey would be there. You'd run into Jerry or a couple of those other guys. And here's a weird tie-in, but Laking It Easy. There's a line in Laking It Easy. Ah, give me a second. But there's a line in Laking It Easy that says, "There's no bad days when you're rocking the waves." That's actually a tribute to Joey. Joey was an amazingly fun human being. Um, and his phrase was always "no bad days."
Mhm.
And so when you think about all of the stuff that we're talking about now, I don't think about this a lot, but now that you got me talking about it, right? Um,
Mhm.
there's a lot of tie-in. And so I think that's one of the reasons why I think the note that I sent you at this age, I think I sent you some, hey, at 51, I did something my 21-year-old self would never do. Um, I believe that's why it is so impactful, no matter what it does. I don't really care what it does, to be honest. Um, there are pieces of all those people. And, I've had
Mhm.
multiple friends pass away that have played music with me in bands. We just had another friend, great, dear, very dear friend of mine, Will Wells, pass away from cancer a couple days ago. Another guitar player that I played with for years passed away from a heart attack. You know, all of those people and all those influences that I've been talking about, the two I just mentioned now, are a part of this journey. And it's kind of interesting that I can hear pieces of all those people in all these songs.
That's why this is super and more than special when you listen to it. I just love hearing this because when I started digging in, I have to find my quiet time to do this, and you can just feel how special all the songs are. Speaking of covers, speaking of the '80s, you killed it on At This Moment. I used to absolutely love that song, and so I hit it and I start playing it and I like start tearing up. I start crying. I'm like got the goosebumps. It was like because it was you and your voice and how freaking amazing the job that you did on it. What it's a
You're so
beautiful
kind.
song already, but Dusty, the touch you put on it is amazing.
Well, thank you. That's a golly. I didn't expect to cry very much today, but it's another song that honestly I've probably been singing for years. And it's probably obvious. You can tell I'm
Hmm.
extremely up for it. Um, Probably since I was a little kid. I remember the first time I ever heard that song, and I'm going to date myself. It originally was heard publicly on Family Ties, and Michael Keaton was breaking up.
That's right.
Okay,
That's right. Yeah.
and I've loved
Yes.
that song ever
Yes.
since. Right, and Billy Vera, um, just that live arrangement that's original.
Hmm.
Oh Jesus, it's so spiritual. It's like
It
so
is.
church, right? And it was interesting. Part of the reason why I cut this song is first off, I love it. But second off, it was something my mom always loved to hear me sing. So as a kid, I'd go to karaoke if we'd be hanging out. That would be something that they would always ask me to do. And so,
Mhm.
there have been lots of people that have covered it, from Michael Bublé to Neil McCoy. You can get on Spotify and find it. And
Yes.
and the interesting piece is, for me, that's just a song that I've loved for years, and it's a huge, huge, huge influence on my music. Like if I could write, I man see that underneath my eye. But that kind of music has always moved me. Like Elvin Bishop's "Fooled Around and Fell in Love" with Mickey Thomas from Starship
Hmm.
singing.
Hmm.
Those are covers I've done live for years, and so and not many people did that music. And so it became something that we were known for. And like I said, my mom wanted me to sing it. And it's pretty meaningful too. I've had multiple situations where, that's how I felt. And I guess that's what you heard in my delivery. But it's kind of one of those deals. And then, you know, Drew and Carrie, when they sent it off, we didn't have the horn section on there. And the gentleman that stacked the horns and did the horns is Toby Mac, the worship singer.
Yes.
It's his horn
Oh,
players. And so
oh,
and
oh, there it
so there's a
is.
whole new vibe, right?
Oh my
And so
gosh.
multiple saxophone stacks. And then I'm gonna tell you, there's not a better piano. You love Hayden Baker, right? So his producer, Travis Bishop, that's the piano
Hmm.
player.
I know. Yes.
And so there's nobody better for that song than Travis. And it was interesting. I remember this comment. He was like, "Bro, the next time you come in and do this, you better tell me it's all piano," because we spent hours, even after everybody went home, working on the piano parts. And there's a spot, and this is my favorite spot of this song at this moment, in the second verse, where it breaks down, and man, there's a piano feel that's kind of bluesy but sad at the same time. And I don't know if you've heard it, but it's like I in this phrase, and it's this little, and it's since the day he plays it, it's what I wait for every time I listen to the song.
Oh, I heard it because I listened to it over and over.
And you know what I'm talking about, that,
Yes,
and I'm like,
yes.
geez,
That's where I wish sometimes, like right now, we could like pull it up and just listen to it anyway. Yeah. Oh wow. This has
yep.
just been I'm so happy for you. And I just tell you, it's like it made my day knowing that you were coming on this morning, but also when the other day, because it was one of my busiest weekends. I had my ladies offshore mermaid tournament and the girls were in, and I'm trying to shuffle all the other things that I'm doing. And I was like, wait a minute, I have like 30 or 45 minutes right now, right
That's
here.
awesome.
So that's what I did. I sat down and started listening, and then I had my phone in my hand. And I couldn't put it down because I kept going back. Okay, well, I need to wash dishes now. Punch it, listen to it again.
Did you
Oh,
get a chance to listen to "I Don't Want to Do This Anymore"?
yes, yes, yes. That's still on my list. That was the next one.
I
Yes.
I'm going to tell you. So I've gone through a pretty interesting transition the last couple of years. The last year in particular, last year and a half. Um, that song in particular, and it's got an interesting story. Um, I got up one morning about 2:30 in the morning and wrote this song in about 8 minutes. And I don't know where it came from, but all I know is there's some local musicians that were dating and had been together for 3 or 4 years, and I would be riding with this gentleman to gigs, and he'd be telling me these stories, man. And it was interesting because you feel for him because you know both of them. I always, of course, talk to the dude more because I'm a dude. I guess I can relate. And and so I get up and I write this song, and man, it was something I didn't even know if I wanted to cut it. I almost didn't even put it on there. And every female that heard the songs like, you got to put it on the record. And I'm like,
Hmm.
I didn't get it, to be honest. I really didn't get it. Um, Preface to this comment, I've learned that sometimes, we can't look at ourselves objectively. I may think there may be a song that I'm doing that I may think I'm killing it, and you have 4 or 5 other people that objectively say, hey, man, you might want to try to do something else. I've learned to trust my crew, right? The people that I run with that know me.
Yes. Yes.
And so, it was really, really interesting when we put that on there. Drew and I kind of looked at each other, didn't know. I said, man, we just need to cut it. Well, the story is I got up and wrote the song thinking of that. Well, and I think after we finished the production, I was with somebody for 3.5 years, went through a pretty nasty breakup. Been by myself for about a year, me and my dogs. But the interesting piece is after writing that song, about the 20th time I sang it live, there's one girl that comes out every time I see her. Please play this song. Please play this song. I'm literally in the middle of the song and I literally have to stop because I'm just overwhelmed, right? And I'm extremely confused because I'm not really thinking about what it was. And I catch myself, get finished the song, and and since this happens, it happens every time I play. I realized that while I was channeling and thinking about somebody else, it's really about myself.
Oh,
And the
wow.
multiple times that I've been in situations where, you know, you love somebody and you care about somebody, but there's just really no physical way that you should make it work. And it was interesting when we got into the studio. Um, I didn't know how it was going to turn out. And to me, that is the sleeper. That is the one that I've always been a believer that, man, if you get a mediocre response, they can take it or leave it. A lot of the new Nashville country has a mediocre response. Do you know what I'm saying? There's no emotional buy-in. They like it. They don't turn it off. They don't say they love it. But if you get people that either say they really hate it or they really love it, you're soliciting emotions. Elvis was like that, I think, in my mind. There are people that loved it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the response I've gotten off of that song has been exactly that. People either really love it and they hold on to it, and or they hate it because maybe it hits too close to home. And
Right.
so the arrangement that they did on it was killer. There's a couple, again, jazz chords, major sevenths.
Hmm.
It's kind of very Linda Ronstadt-y, Heart Like a Wheel, which here's another tie-in. My mom played with Linda Ronstadt in Vegas when I was a kid. So we went for that vibe once we started
Yes.
recording. And,
Uh-huh.
oh my gosh, they did such a great job. I'm
Oh, yeah.
again so much emotional tie.
Okay. Well, dang, Dusty, thank you. I'm so happy that stories behind all the songs, and you just opening your heart and sharing with me. It's always amazing to talk to you. I hope you know how special you are to me. I feel like you're like a brother, and just you do so many great things for so many people, and you're such an encourager.
Thank you. You're so sweet. Thank you. I can't
Yeah.
wait to hear the next batch of songs that come out. I've got more, and it's been my life.
Thank you so much, everyone. Please go check out the EP Under the Neon. It's Dusty Moats on the Texas Toast Podcast.